last week, if you weren't here, we began a new conversation, a new series that we're just simply calling Life After Easter. Easter comes and we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus, and then what? Right? What do we do with that? And that's what this whole conversation is going to be about. We're looking at different stories of the interactions that people had with Jesus after he resurrected from the dead. Now, like probably some of you, I grew up going to church every once in a while, right? Not every week, but more than like just Christmas and Easter, right? It's kind of that middle area. For me, like church was part of my life, but not really a core part of my life, right? Faith was a part of my life, but not really a core part of my life. But for me, like before I had an encounter with Jesus, the summer going into my 9th grade year, before I had that, my life was actually really good. Like I as a pastor, I get to hear a lot of stories of people kind of life made a mess of their life and then met Jesus and it was awesome. That's not my story. My life was fantastic before I met Jesus. I've got 2 parents who were awesome to me as a kid. I mean, they cared about me, they loved me, they supported me, they showed up to all of my stuff, like way more than they probably ever should have. My parents were awesome to me. I mean, even to today, they're still 2 of my best friends. I have awesome parents. When growing up, I had friends who were kind and thoughtful and caring and a lot of fun. And like for every friend that I had, their parents became like second moms and dads to me too. I had tons of that. Growing up, I played a lot of sports, and I was not great at all of them, but I was okay at most of them. I had a ton of fun playing sports. I was pretty good at school. Like by all accounts, like my life before I met Jesus was really good. It was really, really good. But there was still, when I hit kind of that later middle school, like many later middle schoolers, I started asking more of those, deeper philosophical questions, right? Like what is the meaning of life? And specifically, like what is the meaning of my life? Like why am I here? And as I started to ask these questions, what I started to recognize is that as amazing and as awesome as my life was, there was still something about it where my life just wasn't full. Like the idea that I had kind of this is like, like whether you're eating like rice and beans for every single meal, or whether you are eating like Michelin star awesome meals, you're still eventually gonna get hungry. Like that's how my life felt. Like I had like Michelin star meal after Michelin star meal. Like that's what my life felt like. And yet I still had this hunger in me. Like I was never full. And I share that because I think it is similar to how the 2 people that we're going to be looking at today were kind of feeling in their life as well. We're gonna look at a particular story after Jesus resurrected from the dead. In fact, it's a story that happens on the same day that Jesus rose from the dead. That same day, Jesus has an encounter with these 2 people that the story is often referred to as the road to Emmaus. And so we're going to be looking in Luke chapter 24. And I'm going to warn you ahead of time. them, Cleopas replied, "You must be the..." days ago. Then, some women from our group of his followers were at his tomb early this morning, and they came back with an amazing report. They said his body was missing, and they had seen angels who told them Jesus is alive. Some of our men ran out to see, and sure enough, his body was gone, just as the women had said. So Jesus asks them, well, what things? And they go on and they explain the whole thing. But as they explain all these events that had happened, they were sad. Why were they sad? Right? They just heard this amazing news. Why is it that what they still carried in their hearts was sadness? Now, I don't have like a definitive answer on this, but I could make some pretty solid guesses. I mean, why were they sad? I mean, Jesus, the one who they thought was the Christ, the Messiah, had died. Right? Their idea that Jesus was a Messiah, what they thought is that he was going to be a king. He was going to be a king just like all the kings that they had seen before then. Right? That he was going to be the King of Kings. He was going to be the final king. That he was going to do what other kings, what they did. They went into other countries and they defeated them and captured it. And they expanded their kingdom. And then they'd go into the next place and they'd defeat it and capture it, and the kingdom would expand, right? That he was going to be the final king, the king that would set Israel free. And he's dead. He died. They were sad, right? I mean, they even as they describe who Jesus was in the story, you can see, right? They go from thinking that Jesus was the Messiah, right? He was the king. And now they talk about him as if he was a prophet and a good teacher. Still really highly valued things, but pretty huge downgrade from Messiah. They were sad. Right? The religious leaders at the time, the ones who put so much burden on them, the ones who were so oppressive and required so much of them. Right? The ones that they thought Jesus was going to come and set them free from, well, they killed Jesus. And now they're back in power. They're sad. And now they get this news that, well, Jesus isn't in the tomb. He's alive. And I guess maybe someone saw angels. We don't know. I guess it's what we heard. But these guys have been on an emotional roller coaster. Right? Our Messiah is here. Oh, he died. Well, but maybe he's back to life, but maybe not. We didn't really see what happened. Who do we trust? These guys have been going up and down, and at the end of the day, what's in their hearts is sadness. You know, I get this because that's so much of how my life felt before I had met Jesus. Kind of this spiritual, emotional roller coaster. Growing up, I grew up Catholic, and I love my Catholic brothers and sisters, but my experience in the Catholic Church was just not fantastic. And really, because I didn't get it. I didn't understand all the things. I didn't understand all the standing and kneeling. I didn't get it. I didn't understand the white robes that the priest, the father would wear, and the altar boys that they would wear. I didn't get it. I didn't understand the Latin. I didn't understand what this mass, this church thing was all about. It didn't connect with me. I didn't understand it. I'd heard all the different Bible stories. I mean, I'd heard the story of Adam and Eve. I'd heard the story of Noah and the ark. I'd heard the story of, Jesus. But to me, as a kid, I remember, I always connected the story of Jesus to the big statue of the cross, and Jesus was still on it, and he looked so sad, but he was always staring at me, sitting in the pew. It was, that's what I connected it. I didn't get it. The stories, it never connected for me, and it didn't connect to me. Right? I knew that it was important somehow, but I just couldn't understand how. To me, faith and Jesus and the Bible and all the things, it felt like a million-piece puzzle. That all the pieces were kind of sort of there, but I didn't understand how they fit together, and I didn't have a picture or a reference of how they were supposed to fit together. Right? I knew that the Bible was important, I just didn't understand why. I knew the Bible was important, but I didn't understand how. And if I can just be frank here, especially as a kid, it was so boring. Oh, I mean, church, the Bible, it was so boring. I didn't care for it at all. And then add on top of all of that, like my experience with church people was not great. Church people are weird. Like, growing up, people, when we're at church, right, people would put on the big smiley face, like, everything's good, or they'd get really grouchy and like, no, you can't wear that hats in church, absolutely not, right? I'm like, well, I don't know, what are we doing here? I don't know. And they'd act one way at church, and then outside of church, they'd be a completely different person, talking a completely different language, right? In church, you'd sit down in a seat, and they'd come and be like, that's my seat. What? I didn't know that. Okay, well, or like for me, like I remember going to Twins games at the old Metrodome. You remember that? And man, as a kid, it was every time I would go, there was someone who would be there yelling at people, yelling at me, right? Go, turn to Jesus or you'll burn in hell. Turn or burn. My experience with Christians were not great. Like I got it that like Jesus and the Bible and faith and God and all this stuff. Like I got that it was important, but I couldn't connect the dots. I didn't understand how the pieces fit together. I didn't understand how it was important to me. Like maybe it was important for like being a good person and getting into heaven, but beyond that, I didn't get it. Like it was kind of this roller coaster for me. I think that's how, in many ways, these two followers of Jesus were kind of feeling. They had learned all this stuff about the Bible, right? The Old Testament stuff. And then they met Jesus, and it seemed so counter to even a lot of the things that they'd learned. And then he was the Messiah, but now he's dead. But I guess he's back alive maybe, but I don't understand how it all fits together. And so they try to explain these events to Jesus, and then this is how Jesus responds. Picking up in verse 25, it says, "Then Jesus said to them, 'You foolish people,'" which pause, Jesus, whoa, that's kind of harsh. I don't know why I did it, but that's just what's there. "You foolish people, you find it so hard to believe all the prophets wrote in the scriptures. Wasn't it clearly predicted that the Messiah would have to suffer all these things before entering his glory?" Then Jesus took them through the writings of Moses and all the prophets, explaining from all the scriptures the things concerning himself. This is such an important thing for followers of Jesus, for us to recognize what Jesus is doing here with these two disciples, with these two people. Because what Jesus is doing here should absolutely profoundly change the way that you read the Bible, particularly the Old Testament. Because that's what they had, right? When Jesus refers to the writings of Moses, right, the prophets, all the scriptures, they didn't have a New Testament. Right? He's talking about the Old Testament, what we call our Old Testament. He's talking about all of that. And there's two things that I want you to understand about what Jesus is doing here. First, the first thing that Jesus is doing when it comes to reading the Old Testament is what we need to understand is that it's all about Jesus. Everything that happened before Jesus, it's all about Jesus. I mean, what does Jesus do? He takes them through all of the Old Testament and he points them to Jesus. He points them to show them how it's all about his life, his death, his resurrection, about relationship. It's about all these things about Jesus. That when you and I read the Old Testament, we need to have the lens that this is about Jesus. It's maybe a little bit of an old example, but I'll go there anyways. The Sixth Sense, right? We've seen that movie. If you haven't yet, tough. It's been out for 20 years, right? But this movie, it's about this kid who could see dead people. And you watch this movie, and it's about this kid who says, I can see dead people, I can talk to dead people, and he has this therapist that's trying to help him out, and you get to the end of the movie, and what you realize is that the therapist is dead. He's been dead the whole movie. And once you realize that, you have to go back and rewatch it because you realize the movie isn't about the kid, it's about the therapist the whole time. That's what the Bible is like. You can read through the whole Old Testament, but when you get to the point and you go, oh, wait, but Jesus, you have to go back and reread the whole thing because it's a new lens. It's not about all of the laws and the thing. It's about Jesus. The whole thing is about Jesus. I used to do this activity with college-age students and high school students where there'd be a group of them, and I'd say, okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to pick any book from the Old Testament, just randomly, just pick one. I'd show them the books, and they'd pick a random book. And I go, okay, that book has this many chapters. Pick a chapter. And they would just randomly pick a chapter, and I'd be like, okay, that chapter has this many verses. Pick a verse. And they'd pick a verse, and I'd go, okay, that verse is right here. Let's read kind of the passage around it. And what I want you to do is I want you to read it saying, how does this point to Jesus? I mean, I must have done this exercise dozens, maybe hundreds of times. Every single time, they were able to see how this connected to Jesus. Because that's what the Old Testament is about. It's all pointing to Jesus. That's the first thing that Jesus is doing here. That's the first thing I want you to understand about what Jesus just did, is he reframes the entirety of the Old Testament for us. The Old Testament is about Jesus. But here's one more thing that I want you to know about the Old Testament, is that you'll find what you're looking for, in the best way and in the worst ways. Right? If you're looking for the Old Testament to point to Jesus, you'll find that. But if you're looking for the Old Testament to show you that faith is really about just being a moral person, you'll find that. If you're looking for the Old Testament to point out how God hates certain people, you'll find that. If that's what you're looking for, you'll find it. If you're looking for the Old Testament to justify genocide, to justify slavery, you'll find that. But the problem is that that's not what the Old Testament is about. It's about Jesus. We have got to read it with the right lens. These two people on the road to Emmaus, they'd been taught the Old Testament through the wrong lens. And so they didn't get it. They didn't see it until Jesus started to point it out to them. It's all about Jesus. And this is why, here at Bridgewood, we say the Bible, you've got to read the Bible relationally. Because that's what it is, right? If you read through the Bible as a moral guidebook, right? The goods and the bads, the rights and wrongs, we're missing it. Because it's about a relationship. It points to Jesus and how he came to restore our relationship with our Heavenly Father and our relationship with one another, right? The Bible is meant to be read relationally. That's what Jesus is doing here. He is reframing how these people engaged in the Scriptures. That faith is meant to be a relational journey, not just a mental pursuit, not just a moral pursuit, but a relational pursuit. This is what Jesus does to these two people on the road to Emmaus. They explain all the events, all the things that had happened, and then Jesus, on their walk, begins to show them, no, all of this has been pointing to me the whole time. And here's where the story picks up, starting in verse 28. It says, by this time, they were nearing Emmaus and the end of their journey. And Jesus acted as if he were going on. I love that again. Jesus like, all right, I guess I'll keep wandering. But they begged him, stay the night with us, since it's getting late. So he went home with them, and as they sat down to eat, he took the bread and blessed it. Then he broke it and gave it to them, and suddenly their eyes were opened, and they recognized him. And at that moment, he disappeared. I don't know how Jesus disappeared. In my head, I get the picture of Yoda, doing the turn, and then he disappeared. That's how I've always imagined this. I could be totally wrong. Jesus could have just gotten up and walked out. I don't know how this happened, but Jesus disappeared, okay? That's what happened. This happened, their eyes are open, and then Jesus disappeared. And suddenly, right, they said to each other, didn't our hearts burn within us as he talked with us on the road and explained the Scriptures to us? Their hearts burned within them this whole journey as Jesus talked about the Old Testament with them, reframing it for them. Their hearts burned within them, right? But they finally recognized that it was Jesus when? When he took the bread, blessed it, and broke it. I'm sure these are people who'd followed Jesus for years. They were probably there when Jesus took the bread and blessed it and broke it, and then he fed the 4,000. They were probably there when Jesus took the bread and blessed it and broke it and fed the 5,000. They were probably there when Jesus blessed the bread and broke it and then gave it to his disciples at the Last Supper. They were probably there. They recognized this. Their eyes were finally opened. I don't know why God kept them from recognizing Jesus at the beginning, but all the signs were there the whole time for them to see that this was Jesus all along, but they just weren't paying attention. They weren't looking for Jesus. How about you? How about me? Are our eyes open? Are we paying attention? Are you looking for where Jesus might show up? When was the last time you remember your heart burning within you? When was the last time your heart just beat a little bit faster out of excitement? Right? Where you were hearing something, you were experiencing something that just, it filled you with hope, made you feel like you could take on the world. Right? When was the last time you felt that? Like listening to one of the incredible TED Talks that are out there? Right? Was it like reading a really, really good book? Maybe you were being prayed over and something was just stirring inside. When was the last time you remember your heart burning within you? That passion just filling you to the brim. You see, that's what these two followers of Jesus were experiencing as they had this encounter with Jesus. Their hearts burned within them the whole time, but they didn't understand why. They couldn't put the pieces together, right? I mean, these two people, they were listening to Jesus connect the dots. All the things that they had experienced about faith, about the scriptures, right? Even their time with Jesus, all these things that they had experienced before. All of a sudden it was being reframed and the pieces were starting to connect together for them. And something started to come alive in them as they had this encounter with the resurrected Jesus. That everything that they had hoped for, Jesus was saying, no, it's still the case, and it's even better. You don't need a king to rule over and dominate all of these places. No. There's something better happening here. There's a forever forgiveness that you can walk in now, right? There's this eternal victory over death that you now have, right? There's something so much better that you have. There's a new life that you get to live into now. That they were experiencing, right? All these encounters with Jesus they'd had prior to this, all the teachings of Jesus, all the miracles, the healings they'd experienced, it paled in comparison to this moment with the resurrected Jesus reframing all of it. And something burned within them. And they didn't know that it was Jesus until they did. You see, for me, I had this life-changing encounter with Jesus the summer going into my 9th grade year. Right? My life was awesome. It was really, really good. And faith, I didn't get how it all connected together. I knew it was important, but I didn't know why. And so the summer going into my 9th grade year, I was invited by a friend to go up to a summer camp. And so I said, yeah, sure, there's swimming and all kinds of fun stuff. And I was like, yeah, great, let's do it. And that week while I was there, the speaker started to talk about Jesus in a way that made sense to me. He started to connect the dots about how faith isn't just this journey of doing the right things and being a good kind of person, but that it's about this relational journey. That the God of the universe, the God that created all this spectacular stuff around us, like he cares about me. Like he loves me. Like he doesn't just love like the world generic, like he loves me. I'd never heard that before, at least not in the way that he explained it. Like he started just talking, he shared his own story a bit, and he talked about how Jesus had to die and resurrect back to life, and in this, like all the sin and the bad in me was put to death. That God no longer looks at that part of me because he sees his beloved child, one who is forgiven. When he looks at me, he sees Jesus standing in my place. Like that's how he sees me. I'd never heard that before. And as this was all going on, like my heart was burning within me and I couldn't understand why. And finally one night, the speaker, he extended an invitation. He said, hey, if something's stirring in you, I want to invite you. Like that's probably the Lord. And maybe you've never surrendered your life to him. And if you want to do that, let's do that tonight. And so that night, I surrendered my life to Jesus. Because for me, as I was having this moment, as I was encountering Jesus, which I'd come to realize later, like my heart was burning within me, and all of these pieces of the puzzle that had been floating out there, and I just didn't get it, were starting to connect together, and the picture that I was seeing was so beautiful. I didn't have all the pieces, but what I could see, the life that of walking with Jesus, what that looked like, if that was even a glimpse into what this life was like, I wanted that. I was all in. And so that night, I said yes to following Jesus. And I later realized that was one of the first moments that my eyes were opened, that I was paying attention, that my heart burned within me. And it was Jesus the whole time. I've been walking with Jesus now for almost 24 years. And as I've been walking with Jesus this whole time, I mean, my life, like all of our lives, has had all kinds of ups and downs, highs and lows. I mean, awful tragedy and incredible victories, huge failures and major successes. I mean, my life has been up and down and up and down. But through all of it, my life has been full. I have hope. I have peace. Like as I'm walking with Jesus all these years, I'm discovering my purpose and learning to live into it, all the ways that God has gifted me and how he wants to use me to be a blessing to others, to point others to him. I'm doing this. My capacity to love others is growing. It's expanding. Right? Learning to love God, to love other people. Like I don't do it perfectly. I'm not the best at it, but I'm growing in it. Who I am today is so much greater than who I was 24 years ago. That as I walk with Jesus, he's transforming my heart. He's transforming who I am, and my eyes continue to be opened time and time again to his presence in my life. I don't always pay attention, but when I do, he's there. And he's walking with me, and he's talking to me. And I'm learning how to respond to his voice. That's the invitation today. Like these two followers of Jesus that had an encounter with him on the road back to Emmaus, their hearts burned within them. Their eyes were opened, and they finally saw that it was Jesus the whole time. Perhaps this morning, there's something that the Lord has been stirring in you, but maybe you haven't been paying attention. And maybe this morning there's an aha. Oh, Jesus, I see it now. Oh, I get it. That's the invitation this morning. That he wants to have a moment with you, to set your heart on fire, to fill you with passion, to fill you with excitement, because he is with you, and he is inviting you on a journey with him. So this morning, I want to pray for you. That maybe you've been starving to have your eyes open, to have a moment with Jesus, to have your heart burn within you again. I want to pray that for you. That Jesus would meet you in that place and fill you in that way. And for others of you, maybe you've never had an encounter with Jesus before. Maybe like me, it's just the pieces are there, they've never made sense, they've never clicked together. I want to pray for you too. That Jesus would start connecting those pieces together, and that the picture you see is as beautiful as Jesus truly is. So let me pray for you. Jesus, I'm so grateful for the ways that you have moved in my own life, for the ways that you've connected the dots and helped me see the picture of who you truly are, a picture that is so much better than I could have ever imagined. This morning, Lord, you know where each and every person is at. You know where everyone's heart is, where every heart has been. And Lord, this morning, for those who are starving to hear your voice, to have their hearts set on fire with passion again, Lord, would you meet them here today? Would you speak words of life? Would you connect the pieces that they never knew fit together? Would you bring them to life? And Lord, for those who are here this morning, who've never seen the beauty of who you truly are, Lord, this morning, would you connect the dots for them as well? Would they see the God who loves them deeply? Because Jesus, you are alive. You are speaking. You are meeting us right where we're at, and you journey with us, helping us connect the dots so that we might find you. Jesus, that's our prayer this morning. We love you, Lord. Help us hear your voice and see who you are, and give us the courage to respond in the way that you are calling us to respond. Jesus, in your name, amen.